where's the roadmap is one of the most common and frightening questions there is, right? Because we've been doing so much of just like soul searching internally to like understand what it is we're building, um, and also just building up the team and the capabilities to actually build something, right? Like, and the hardest part with putting out a roadmap is I really don't want to put out something we that we can't back up, right? So I'm very hesitant about like publishing like dates and publishing like, okay, here's the next 6 months or the next year, when we're really like operating generally like 2 to 4 weeks ahead, like ahead of where we're going, right? Um, so yeah, but the real answer is that I think we've done enough soul searching now, and we're writing the new white paper. Basically, it's same, but they're also very different. And with that will come like a proper roadmap for the upcoming, basically for this full year and probably leading into 2023. And we're working on it right now as we speak, so it'll be ready, this summer for sure.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Yeah, Jason helps write a lot of the documentation and organize the work that we do. We're very happy to have him. He's really good at his job, and he's also a very kind human being. So it's a pleasure to work with him. Don't hesitate to ping us for details on our community Discord as well. In general, not just for this AMA. And we are now reiterating some of the questions that we talked about already multiple times. Yeah, we're very happily working away at the new white paper. We are daily asking ourselves the question, really, what new possibilities can multiplayer in AR bring and unlock? And this is why it's taking a while to rewrite the white paper, because we have a lot of really cool ideas that we want to integrate. And we're also working on a bunch of prototypes as we speak that can then be later implemented into into that white paper, into some of these sections that we're currently working on. Let's move on to another question by Snake Eyes. When can I pat my dog? Very important question. Actually, you will be able to pet your dog very soon, maybe in the next monthly build. Jason, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think there's been a few videos shared, but Alki has been working very diligently on a computer vision solution for hand detection. There are existing hand detection solutions, but they all use the LiDAR. So what our hand detection is monocular, which means it's just using your camera, which means it will be more accessible in a lot more devices. So that basically we've received like the very first version of that from Alki a few weeks ago, maybe like early this month, right? And have been playing with it, seeing how it works, integrating it, and just like troubleshooting all the normal troubleshooting stuff you have whenever you're integrating a new piece of technology, right? At a minimum, in the next build will be a very primitive version of some like petting or type feature, using your actual hand. That's really exciting. And it's going to just get better from there, right? Because we're going to keep working on it, keep improving it, make it better.
Yeah, Jason, I will challenge you a little bit about saying that it's really exciting, because the whole point of having a 3D hand reconstruction is the fact that we were able to create it, as you say, on a monocular RGB camera. It's never been done before. We're doing it in 60 FPS in Unity, and we are incredibly excited really about how we can now interact with Matterless objects. The fact that you can hold out your hand and touch something and interact with it on a regular baseline mobile device is a really big deal. Like, people don't really understand the implication of this, because I guess a lot of people who are not very familiar with AR think it can already be done because they watched a movie like Minority Report or Iron Man, and they see like people kind of like moving their hands around, like zooming in, zooming out. Like all of that stuff is impossible to do. All of that is CGI. But with what we are doing, it's actually becoming real.
Right. Yeah. That it doesn't exist anywhere. I think, there is a kind of thing where, these days, especially with like machine learning, people just assume that everything works or exists, but it's like, no, no, not really actually. Um, so it's kind of a big deal. It's a really big milestone for Aoki Labs, and then for us to be able to use it for our features, right?
Absolutely. We're super excited. We're the first company that's able to use the Aoki SDK for 3D hand reconstruction, even though we reached out to some other people to help us kind of understand what the scope could be. So we're currently working on a couple of different things, which might be super cool, which we cannot talk about right now, unfortunately. So, Tracy asked, have you guys given more thought to having a sliding sizing slider for the pet? Meaning, do we want to be able to allow the user to change the size of the pet in the app?
So this is a really good question, but there's a few facets of it. So the first question is, do we want it, right? Which is just to start off, and I think probably the answer is yes. Um, so it's certainly so. We, to start with it, we would need to break down what does this feature actually do? What is it for? And what it is for is taking better pictures and videos, right? Primarily. It can also be used for just gameplay in general, and that's something we need to consider, right? Are the sizes of our pets static, or are they changeable, right? Like, and if you have that situation, you can see how in like these kind of app development, these things cascade into a whole bunch of decisions. If I've scaled my pet up and I join someone's space and they've scaled their pet down, now what happens, right? Is it become, does one of them get smaller? Does the other one do they both become big? Do they both become small? Or do you have this kind of mismatch happening, right? And so um, simple questions can often lead to, they're often not as simple as they sound. That's point one. That being said, I think it's probably a pretty good feature just for general quality of life. Um, then it just comes down to priority. And this is kind of, in a way, my whole job is trying to figure out what to do in what order. The thing with priorities, and this is always very tricky, is like it's kind of a cold job. It's very, feels very merciless sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you see everything that's on top of it, really, it's just a huge stack of stuff to do. And you say, is it more important than this? Well, probably not. Is it more important than this? And so it finds its spot, right? It's a spot in the depth of the ocean, kind of thing. And but the other thing is, if you do stick to that process, it does get done eventually. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think the answer is probably, but not anytime soon.
Yeah. Like when we talk about stacking and chunking tasks, it reminds me of something we often talked about because we're both gamers, and it's about the build order, right? So if you guys are familiar with StarCraft or any other RTS, how do you build the optimal base? What do you need to build to get to the most powerful unit, or to be able to, how many pylons do you need until you can build a mothership if you're playing
Yeah.
StarCraft? And it's always like construct additional pylons. Like it ends up being basic stuff most of the time.
Well, that's actually a pretty good analogy because there's different strategies, right? You can rush like a specific strategy and get something done really quickly, but you've kind of taken a few shortcuts to get there, right? So you can do that, but then your foundations are a little more shaky. You have more technical debt, and so
Pretty exposed.
you're exposed, exactly. So there's a balance there, right? Because if you do too much rushing, then it becomes kind of a house of cards, and it's going to collapse one day, right? On the flip side, if you do nothing but foundational building, then you have a really, really strong game engine that does nothing. You have a game engine,
Stuff doesn't get done. Yeah.
but you don't have a game, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a balancing act, really, right? And we try
Hmm.
to balance like infrastructure work, new features, and like little improvements as well. So it's like trying to keep a little bit of everything all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is a balancing act, and we are, we're a startup. We're finding our way in it. We have assembled a team of awesome wizards with different skill sets, and now we're figuring out, how we can best mesh all of those things together, and who's the best person to execute on a certain task. And this is also something that always reminded me, like something that I thought about a lot is like when you say the CEO title, right? Chief Executive Officer. What does that mean? And at first I just thought, this is a boss, like somebody who has the vision, but it's actually the person who executes, right? Like execution is the number one thing. Like you have to get stuff finished, done. And in my interpretation, the chief executive officer is the one who can execute the best, right? Finishing tasks the fastest, in a quality which is good enough. We often say perfect is the enemy of good. When we talk about stuff, getting stuff done right now is our priority. So we are rushing a bit, but we're also trying to build a foundation. So it is a lot of it is a balancing act.
The mid
Um,
well, I can add
yeah.
one more point, which is one of my favorite quotes. Is actually a quote from the U.S. military. It's slow is
Mhm.
smooth, and smooth is fast, right? So,
Nice.
and the point of that quote is that the fastest way to do something is to do it properly. Because if you rush, you're going to mess up, and then it's going to take twice as long to fix your mistake than just doing
Yeah.
it properly in the first place.
What did Shigeru Miyamoto said? The man who made most of the games for Nintendo. What was it? A
It,
bad game. A game that's
oh, I've
bad
got it.
is always bad. Okay, let me
Uh,
see. Let me see. So a game that's bad is always bad. A game that's late can be good. Was
yeah,
it?
a delayed
Yeah.
game is eventually good. A bad game will be bad forever.
Yeah. Exactly.
A rushed game.
Um. All right. So no Zerg rushing here. Sorry. Baby Tiger, he asked a very interesting question and pertinent to you guys. Will Patreon supporters get anything special? Yes, definitely. Patreon supporters, you guys are currently our number one concern. We're super happy to have you. We're extremely grateful for everything that you do, for chatting in the multiple channels that we have, for offering us support, feedback, ideas for what we're going to do in the future, and we're taking that all of that into account. For instance, Tracy asked if we could have a slider for the animal for its size, and we genuinely started considering it after she said that. So like we were trying to figure out exactly how entities can unity objects, how they can communicate to each other, like how will it trigger animations, etc. So we're definitely always looking to you guys for some new ideas and to create something that you would want. So yeah, of course you will get some perks. And
Yeah,
right now, yeah, sorry, go on, Jason.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, we don't exactly know what they're gonna be yet, or when they're gonna be. We don't have anything specifically planned. Oh, there is a there's a plan to make a plan. So there's gonna be something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought about, as we're designing and slowly implementing more features, more ideas come up on how we can interact with those features, and the emergent gameplay that comes out of having something like a fetch system in the future, where we are colliding. We're using colliders to create physics in the real world using the camera. Um, there's a lot of cool stuff that we're thinking about. So like, you will be the first to know. Like, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We would rather keep it stealthy for a while and then later wow you. Which is exactly why the next question that Tracy asked is pretty fun and something that we're spending a lot of time on. So Tracy asks, any hints, teasers about these other apps that fall under the Matterless brand? This one is for you, Jason.
Okay, sure. So, um, yeah. So basically, um, we're kind of pursuing two tracks at the moment. The first one is what everyone is already familiar with is the companions, an app focused on companionship and kind of pets, broadly speaking, and that has kind of its own development track. But the vision for that, true vision of what that, the end goal of that is honestly years away. Like in terms of meeting our initial dream, right? It's a long-term play. So we figure in the meantime, it's probably also worthwhile to try some other stuff, right? And try some smaller bets, right? Some small projects. Um, and along with that is just kind of in our soul searching of figuring out who we are as a company, right? And really, it's like, well, we're an AR company, we're a multiplayer AR company, right? There's a lot of AR companies, but a lot of them don't do multiplayer the way we do. It's actually quite an amazing asset. So continuing that line of thought, if you have a new medium, like multiplayer AR is essentially a new medium, the same way movies are the same way uh, Twitch is, right? So what can you do with that medium, right? So uh, how does that work? How do you figure that out? So you have to prototype. You have to build a bunch of stuff and see what works, see what makes sense, what's intuitive, and then see what doesn't. And the thing that you really want to prototype then is the interactions that you can do, right? Is this thing so what we're is this thing intrinsically fun to play with, right? And what that is actually like it's not a game. The game has goals, it has rules, right? But it's a toy. It's something that you just enjoy playing with. I always use the analogy of swinging around in the new Spider-Man games.
Oh my God, yes, the traversal that Insomniac did. Actually, this is what I bought. Why I bought the PS4 again, because I was at a friend's place and he was just swinging around, and I was like, "What game is this?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a new Spider-Man game. You can just do this for hours." And I tried it, and I was like, "Yeah, I need to buy this game. I need to
Yeah.
buy this console just to swing around."
And so that's kind of basically what we're building then is we're prototyping toys, right? And what we mean by that, there's because toy has kind of two meanings then, right? There's a physical thing is a toy, and so bringing a physical thing into AR, and that's part of it. Then part of it is also just creating, call it experiences that are intrinsically fun to do, right? Basically, the short answer is we're coming up. We're trying to figure out what the process is going to be for this prototyping of like that, because it's like kind of a try it. If it works, keep building it. If it doesn't work, kill it. Try something else, right? And trying to see what works, and we're going to try to build out a collection of toys, things that we can build something small, something fun, put it on the app store, start to build up a catalog of of of, of things so that we can kind of be out there.
Yeah, one of the ways, like if I can go a little bit high level here, right? So we talked a lot about the difference between a game and a toy, and one of the main differences is actually the motivation. So usually for a game, you have it starts off with intrinsic motivation, so something that you really want to do, but then it ends up sometimes feeling like a chore. For instance, like you start playing basketball and then you become a professional basketball player, and then you have like tons of stress because you need to um, you need to perform under pressure. It's the last game. The result is tied, and you need to hit. You need to sink that ball in. You need to dunk, and it becomes like extremely stressful, as opposed to playing with a toy where you have intrinsic, where you keep this intrinsic motivation to do things, where it's just like fun, like you're exploring what you can do with it, and it's actually much more open, and it kind of comes. It's closer to our company values and what we think about how people should be spending time together, sharing things, feeling connected. So we're kind of trying to harness the fun in having a wonderful experience, as opposed to just like getting the high score.
I can
It's
add,
also very hard.
yeah, I can add that, like, so this is a lesson that I kind of learned when I joined, right? Because when I joined, what did I start building, Damir? I started building progression
Yeah,
systems, right?
yeah,
Like game
leveling up. Yeah,
metagame, right? Kind of stuff, right? And because, well, just frankly, that's kind of what I was used to building. But it kind of took a bit of a, it took some time, but we kind of like realized, or I kind of realized, right? Like, oh, this stuff's not, this stuff's good to have, right? It's good to have, levels. Like if you think of karma, kind of like a level, or you think of a, um, very specific gameplay goals or targets thing, and then you get into things like
yeah,
quests, I don't know, daily quests or something, right? those
yes,
those are
yeah,
nice, right? Those are nice to have, but they only work if the underlying thing is fun, right?
absolutely.
Otherwise it's a chore.
Yeah,
So we've kind of reshifted mentally about, like, no, let's just make sure that this thing we're creating is fun to interact with, and you can just enjoy it, and then when you build a layer on top of it, it's a bonus. It's not a, it's just more stuff to do, more content, which is great.
yeah, yeah. I really want to nerd out about like how to actually make design based on using verbs instead of nouns, but we're gonna leave that for another time. That was a really cool conversation.